Being plastic means you are molded by your environment. It also means that you are mendable, bendable, and you can adjust to the needs of all of your surroundings. I must have been made out of steel because something became very apparent to me. Once I thought it was a strength. My rigid nature showcased my ability to foresee different problems that needed resolution. And my strong willed nature did one thing in particular: it enabled me to persevere where others could not. But over time, just like any metal, it begins to corrode. Rust starts to appear. Little by little, you never notice it all at once, unfortunately, and in dramatic fashion, like a dying star, it explodes. My mental health, my physical health, and my spiritual health all began to decline because of my inability to foresee the future and adapt to my surroundings. Weird that all of this tends to happen not just because of the environment I'm in, but also because of my unique disposition. Those on the spectrum find an interesting paradox where we are forced to live in a reality that does not always align with the needs of others. We do the best we can with what we have, but over time, things begin to fall apart. And if we are not aware of these things, our mental health and everything else collapses with it. I never felt like I was at home. Don't we all deserve that place that feels like home? The unfortunate thing is I chose to be in that environment. For the better part of a decade, I chose to be there. But that was exactly that. It was my choice. I listened to those instead of my own wisdom. And I think we all search for belonging in some way, shape, or form. And I want to talk about these things in greater detail. As promised in my last video, this is the beginning of a 3-part series. I hope you guys enjoy these videos. These are some things that have been on my mind for quite some time, and this is something that I feel very passionately about. And not only do I want others to excel and succeed where they have failed, but I also want people to see that there are more avenues than just college, trades, and anything else in between. But this isn't about those things. This is a story about how the proverbial cultural staff has been wielded by people for far too long. Generational shifts allow for different ideas and different needs for different groups move along in the workplace. Unfortunately, all of that is leaving something to be desired. With all of that being said, I want to get into today's topic. Older generations. So what have they done? They enabled the 9-to-5 work week. They helped us establish a culture that is hell-bent on progress. All good things must come to an end. With that cultural staff being held for so long, a lot of these people haven't been able to enjoy their golden years as they should. And when they have, the wisdom that they have passed down isn't so much wisdom as it is more a rigid model that is set up to not just disparage people, but more or less set up to hold people where they can't be accountable. Where that was once upon a time acceptable, it is no longer the case. Times have changed. People's needs have changed. We have new innovations right on our doorstep, ready to help us with our affordable housing crisis. We have many opportunities to address all of the elephants in the room, and we have an education system, not just higher education, but trade education, that is failing thousands of people. These are all things that we are going to discuss in these videos that I released this week. But one thing I want to make clear, all of these things have a drastic cost. I was laid off. I left the trade. Why did I leave the trade? Multiple reasons. But I think everyone's journey changes over time. But the one thing that is clear is that our cost of following these broken and archaic systems isn't just a broken pipeline. It's people addressing our young people entering the workforce, entering the trades, and they leave just as fast. They leave with broken dreams, broken hopes, and nothing to show for it. Why? Because those 10-hour days, 5 days a week, 6 days a week, 7 days a week, you paid a lot of taxes, you broke your body, you didn't get much for it except paying your mortgage, but you're miserable. That is not the case for everyone. I want to be very clear about this. What I am frustrated with is how we have gone so far away from making sure that these apprenticeships and these apprentices are not just taken care of or maintained or adapted to. We're in a place where plagues of misinformation and people can't make decisions for themselves because this is the way it's been done, this is the way it will always be done, and this is how it's going to be. As mentioned a minute ago, I did not leave the trades because I wanted to. And honestly, if I had not been laid off, I would probably still be there. Bitter, miserable and dragging everyone else down on the team. I was in a great position. I was in quality control. I could have done so many wonderful things in there, but I was never happy. I was never content with what I did because I was not living my dream. I was living somebody else's. A lot of people will tell you, oh, well, it's nice to say that. You live at home. Oh, you have a husband that makes a lot of money, or blah, blah, blah. There's so many different things where people will blame me and say what I'm doing is self-centered. Let me tell you something self-centered. Selfishness is not allowing growth in an industry. Selfishness is laying off someone without rhyme or reason. Selfishness is holding on to more money than passing it down to your workers. Selfishness is not addressing the needs of your people. There's so many frustrations I have, so I'm not going to go that route because I could just rant for hours. But the bottom line is that people have their own interests at heart. They want to provide for their families. As they should. They want to buy a house, so that way they have something to provide for their children. As they should. But all of these things are a fleeting dream that only certain people who were lucky enough to adopt before the inevitable collapse began. Women, queer folks, neurodiverse individuals, people of color, anyone else in between. We didn't leave because we weren't capable. We didn't leave or abandon our posts because we couldn't do the work. That's quite the contrary. We didn't leave for any number of reasons. We left because the space was never built for us. Not just because we demanded it change, but because they never thought we would be there in the first place. The unfortunate thing about all of this is as soon as you speak up, you are told to toughen up, stop making it political, and get back to work. Well, I have something to say about that. What happens when you get back to work? Are you happy to swing that hammer, twist those wires together? Are you happy to go ahead and help pull that wire? No, because there was some form of injustice done against you, and the people that should have had your back did not. When cultures start to die, they scream so loud that they suck the air out of the room. It's either suffocate, capitulate, or walk away. What are you going to do? I'm going to tell you right now, I'm not going to stand for it. I don't think anyone should. DEI always gets a bad rap. Why does it get a bad rap? Well, first of all, the culture that is being controlled currently is controlled by the boomers. They haven't let go of those reins. Meanwhile, Xers, Millennials, Zoomers, and Gen Alpha, who is yet to enter the workforce, are getting passed up. But the issue we face is that people are living longer, people feel better longer, and are working longer. When you hold on to the cultural reins for too long, the culture begins to fall apart, collapse, and decay around it. One of the things that has happened is that all of this is happening, and the Xers, the Millennials, the Zoomers, and Gen Alpha, who has yet to even enter the workforce, are going to have to pay this price. Because we cannot maintain this forever. And while you might say, oh, well, Zoomers are lazy, Millennials are entitled, and Xers, well, they whine way too much. Well, let's be honest here. The four of them together have known almost nothing more than conflict. The Xers, the Cold War, the fall of the Berlin Wall, all of those things culminated for the Xers and the Millennials. But the Zoomers, what did they get? A war in Iraq, a war in Afghanistan, and a whole lot of hell to pay in the Middle East and in Russia and Ukraine. That doesn't seem like a very fair trade-off, does it? Everyone has a different challenge in life. Every different demographic has a different need. But I believe with all of my heart that if all of us pull together, Xers, Millennials, Zoomers, Alpha, Beta, and everyone after, we have a chance not just to fix the mistakes that have been made, but we have a chance to really reinvigorate what it means to be a human. Not just an American, someone who cares, someone who can adapt the needs for the next generation to come. I was having a conversation with my father and my brother and my mother. So I'm going to start with my dad's response. He has this theory that in order for the culture to change, his entire generation has to die off. My dad is an Xer. So is my mother. Next, we have my mom. She believes that people are going to do what they're going to do, and at this point, it's a lost cause, so why bother? Well, that's healthy. You look at my brother. Mind you, he is quite a few years younger than me, looks me in the eye and says, well, it's always been this way, it's always going to be this way. The trades often go in these cycles of delayed change, and usually it takes an additional 5 to 10 years for any cultural shift, and usually it's because a government made them change. Safety practices, DEI, other things in regards to making sure employers are taken care of and not taken advantage of. Human resources, that was something that was not required until relatively recently. All of these developments enable change and progress. But when we don't use them for any other metric except to say a box has been checked, we aren't really embracing change. We are capitulating and allowing for the mental health decline that we have been experiencing nationwide. This all sounds very dark and dreary, doom and gloom, all of the other whatever you want to call it. And for a long time, I felt this way. But I want to be clear about something. All of these things you're not alone in, but you have a chance to pull yourself out of this. Thousands of people walk into the trades every year, full of life, ready to do their part, just to walk right back out and question why they did what they did. This isn't because, as I've mentioned several times in this video, because they couldn't do the work or because they weren't man enough. It was because no one ever took the time to build a system where they could thrive, function, and contribute and bring their ideas to the table. How depressing is that? This dropout crisis all stems from one place. We all have ideas to resolve this, but when mental health declines, stability declines. When stability declines, safety declines. While this generation is walking away and all of these things are culminating, shortages increase, costs grow, safety concerns, all of these things we have solutions for. And this is what I want to get at. We have the solutions, but we can't talk about the solutions without addressing the problem. Being an ostrich is great until a crocodile comes and bites your ankle. Just because you bury your head in the sand doesn't mean that problem is still not going to face you at the end of the day. Consequences are real, and they should not be damned. The sad part is we've made it harder to stay than start. These pipelines don't just repair themselves. We have to do the work. So let's talk about it. What are the actual solutions? We've talked about all of these problems, and I don't want to beat a dead horse here, but the one thing I do want to say, just to put a nice little bow on all of this, is that all of these things that we have done to establish growth and prosperity are things that we can do today to help people progress in the future. I know that sounds like a whole bunch of nonsense, right? But we have these solutions. Being a misfit is a strength. Embracing your inner child is not a weakness. Enjoying Saturday morning cartoons at the age of 40 is not a crime. Going outside and walking with your kids and playing with them on a playground isn't childish. It's childlike. It's whimsical. It's imagination without boundaries. It's the ability to adapt to the needs of the moment. It's something that we forget the older we get. Everyone can remember what it was like to be a child. Everyone remembers those first emotions that they had back in kindergarten. They may not remember their teacher's name or the first friend they made or even what they were talking about, but they will remember those emotions and what it felt like. How do you make those experiences for our young people just like walking into a kindergarten classroom? I'm not expecting finger painting or, Play-Doh or nap time or anything, but what I am expecting is a place where ideas can be shared and where people feel heard, because when you feel heard, you change your environment around us. I believe at this stage, once we embrace our inner child, it's time to stop asking for a seat at their table because they're not going to give it to us. It's time to sit at the kids' table and embrace the change ourselves. The fascinating thing about younger generations is that you typically can't grasp the concept of what it's actually capable of. Technology, for example, artificial intelligence, the very thing that helps me do much of my research for these videos. Don't worry, I do vet a lot of it. But one thing I want to make clear is that every generation has a new technological advancement, right? And you can tell a lot about a demographic by how they interact with that technology. The boomers are starting to use AI, but they're using it more like Google. Xers, they use it more for journaling, recording, and getting perspective. Millennials, they use it for research, education purposes, and how to improve their workflows. Zoomers, well, unfortunately, they use way too much of it for homework and completing essays. Not that that's a bad idea, but what I do believe is that all of these things have one thing in common. We all use that resource, although in different ways. That's a bridge that connects every generation. We have an opportunity to learn from one another, and I guarantee you, just like artificial intelligence, we all have a lot more in common than we think. I started this video with telling you that I might have been made out of steel. Something strong, but over time corrodes. But everyone knows that with a little bit of magic, welding, grease, oil, lubricants, and other forms of protection, rust is preventable. I believe that we have a real chance to rectify all of these issues. And just like Rodney from Robots, see a need, fill a need, right? That inspirational quote that many of us millennials and Zoomers remember from being kids. It's something that we can embrace, something that brings us together and helps reunite us with not just our inner child, but reunites us with the communities that we are a part of. Everyone has a different subset of interests that they are a part of. It doesn't matter if it's golf, football, or minor league sports. Everyone has something that they love and love to be a part of. So let's reconnect. Let's find a way to bridge those gaps. Just as a reminder, this is part 1 of series. And part 2, well, it's right around the corner. I hope to have it out this weekend. No guarantee of which day, but sooner rather than later. And if you haven't already done so, please go ahead and like and subscribe. And until next time, this has been my Coffee Corner, and I'll catch you on the next one.